Natalie and Monique Middlecoff, Natalie Hodson. Okay, I really like this question. So a lot of people are familiar with the word Kegels.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we hear that growing up.
Yep.
And so when we talk about a pelvic floor contraction, there's actually 4 different types of contractions. And so we kind of wanted to explain. I get really embarrassed when I use the word sphincter for some reason, but we have multiple sphincters that you can contract as well as contracting the pelvic floor. So do you want to kind of talk about the details?
Absolutely. And let me see too, because I also grabbed the picture. When I was young, my mom even would talk about the importance of, okay, you got to do a Kegel.
Well, why don't you show, like last night we showed, so your pelvic floor in somebody's body is the bones, muscles,
and connective tissue
that sit in this area right here.
Yes, and I actually think it's helpful. Not many women feel super comfortable with their bony structures, and I don't think it's weird to like actually feel to know where those structures are.
Yeah, to like grab your hip bone. Okay, there's my hip.
Absolutely.
Like this little guy that juts out right here, that's a hip bone, you know, like this is your pubic bone. It's like this hard bone.
Absolutely, and that's where the right and the left side come together. And there's cartilage that keeps connecting that right and left side, and that's just called a pubic symphysis. So when we look at kind of how that pelvis sits, so these would be the bones here. This portion here would be your legs. So we have the pelvis, and then we have your femurs that attach into it. And in that big section below, kind of if we're looking down into it, that's where we have the muscles that help support the weight of everything on top. So when we have weight of the baby, weight of maybe our just abdominal fat, when we have even our muscle mass weight, things that are pressing down, whether it's a colon or bladder, it's pushing down on those pelvic floor muscles. And so oftentimes people would say like, oh, I don't know if I should wait and do maybe pelvic floor strengthening after exercise, or I had a C-section delivery. I don't need to be doing those things because I didn't use those muscles during delivery. But the weight of the baby is pressing down the whole time. And especially if you've just been overweight, the weight of the abdomen is also pressing down on the muscles. So it's important that we work on it. And just like if we're working on any other muscle group, if we don't work on it, it typically gets worse over time instead of better over time.
So when I was growing up, I would think of a Kegel as just like tightening your vagina, basically.
Yes.
And so Monique does a really good job of explaining how you have like 3 different sphincters that you can contract, as well as lifting that pelvic floor.
That's right. So if you can think about closing off the flow of urine. So if you were to go to the bathroom and you wanted to completely cut off that flow, you'd be using the muscles that help control the urethra. So that would be like a urethra sphincter contraction, cutting off the flow of urine. Well, one step back, just going right behind that, that's a vaginal contraction. So if you were to think, okay, contract and close down, reduce the diameter of the vagina, that would be a vaginal contraction. Right before that, if you were to go to the bathroom and want to cut off the flow of stool, that would be an anal contraction. So that whole kind of pattern of cut off the flow of urine, make a vaginal contraction, cut off the flow of stool. Those are all sphincter muscles, which just means they're circular in their fiber pattern. I like to know how the fiber of different muscles, like a bicep is a long muscle group that contracts together. Sphincter muscles are circular, and when they contract together, they close down, which is really helpful. Yeah. So if we're working on urinary incontinence and we're only working on the muscles, let's say, that are cutting off the flow of stool, we're not working on the right muscle groups.
Totally.
If we're working on support and we're only working on cutting off the flow of urine, we're missing the lift and hold that we get when we do that type of contraction.
So one thing I want to show you guys that Monique showed me that was like, oh, that makes sense. So I understood. So when she explained it like that, I'm like, cool, I got it. Like, those are 3 sphincters that you can contract or cut off the flow. And then she said, okay, take your hand. I'm gonna take this chair back.
Absolutely.
So so they can see. They said, take your hand and literally like put it on your crotch,
in between your legs. Absolutely.
Put it between your legs and then lift up. And that's kind of how you imagine your pelvic floor lifting up, because it's that same like lift up motion and feeling. You probably describe it better.
Oh no, well, and I like to think because they're kind of shaped, it's not like a bowl because it doesn't dip hugely down like a bowl.
Yeah.
But as they get stretched and kind of extended with a lot of extra weight, that they kind of dip down sort of like more like a sling rather than a plate. And so when we can contract, it lifts up. And you can feel, I think you can really feel, because we displace some of the lower organs in our body when we do lift up, because it's providing extra support. That is the type of motion that we want to have bracing as we're doing weight transfer by maybe lifting groceries or babies or whatever we're lifting from one side to the other. We want to have that pelvic floor support. So making that contraction as we're lifting and moving shifting our body weight helps a lot.